What if a simple piece of polished metal, a mirror once used to glimpse one's own face, could hide a message that has outlived empires and still refuses to surrender its secret? In the desert town of Kerman, Iran, archaeologists uncovered a bronze mirror dating back roughly 2,000 years, its surface still gleaming despite the centuries of sand and sun. At first glance, the artifact seemed ordinary, a round, convex disc with a polished backing, a common luxury item among the elite of the Parthian kingdom. Yet, when the mirror was gently lifted from its cradle, a faint pattern emerged on the reverse, invisible to the naked eye but revealed under low-angle lighting. It was not a decorative motif, but a series of interlocking lines and dots, arranged in rows that reminded scholars of early numerical systems. The first researcher to notice the design was Dr. Lael Shirazi, a specialist in ancient Near Eastern epigraphy. She described the markings as a cryptic lattice that defies any known Parthian script. Over weeks of painstaking examination, the team employed infrared reflectography and 3D laser scanning, discovering that the pattern was etched, not merely painted. The depth of the incisions suggested intentionality, as if a hidden language had been pressed into the metal before the mirror was ever polished. Several theories have surfaced. Some suggest the cipher could be a form of early accounting, a tally of goods exchanged in the bustling trade routes that criss-crossed the region. Others argue it might be a personal code, a love letter encoded by a noblewoman who feared her words would be intercepted. A more radical hypothesis, presented by Professor Amir Khosravi of Tehran University, proposes that the mirror bears a fragment of a lost mirror script, a system thought to be used by priest astronomers to record celestial events, their reflections captured alongside the mundane. What makes the puzzle even more unsettling is the mirror's provenance. It was found alongside a cache of bronze weapons and a sealed clay jar that, when opened, released a faint, metallic scent reminiscent of rain on hot stone. No contemporary texts mention such mirrors being used for secret communication, and the cipher's structure does not match any known language from the period, from Aramaic to early Persian. Each line terminates in a small, triangular notch, a detail that some scholars liken to the tic-tac of an ancient tally system, yet the overall composition hints at a syntax far more sophisticated. As the night falls over the excavation site, the bronze mirror sits in a dimly lit tent, its surface catching the flicker of lantern flames, the hidden script glimmering like a ghostly whisper from a forgotten age. Researchers continue to test the incisions with chemical reagents, hoping to reveal faint residues that might indicate ink or pigment once applied. Until a breakthrough occurs, the mirror remains an enigmatic bridge between the living and the dead, a polished portal that not only reflected faces, but also concealed a message that may never be decoded. And so the question lingers. What truth, what fear, what hope was the ancient artisan desperate enough to etch into a mirror, hoping that only those who dared to look beyond their own reflection would ever understand? Have you ever walked across an empty stretch of desert and felt the earth itself holding its breath? In the heart of the Namib, far beyond the nearest settlement, lies a solitary stone that has baffled explorers for over a century. A monolith so perfectly hewn it seems to belong to a forgotten age, yet it moves. Every full moon, the giant slab, standing nearly 20 meters tall, appears in a different spot, as if the desert itself were rearranging its own bones. The story begins in 1907, when a German colonial survey team charted the dunes of the Great Namib. Their maps marked a strange, isolated rock formation at coordinates 24 degrees 12s, 15 degrees 30e. The men described it as a black tower of basalt, smooth as polished obsidian, rising from the sand like a finger pointing to the heavens. They took photographs, left a cairn of stones, and moved on, convinced they had found a natural curiosity. Decades later, in 1973, a team of geologists from the University of Cape Town returned to verify the site. They arrived at the coordinates at dusk, only to discover the monolith missing. The sand lay flat, undisturbed, as if nothing had ever stood there. The following night, under a full moon that bathed the dunes in an eerie silver glow, the stone reappeared, now perched 300 meters to the east, its shadow stretching across the dunes in a perfect, impossible alignment with the moon's disk. Witnesses report that the stone never moves at any other time. Only when the moon reaches its fullest, its pale light seems to awaken an unseen force. Some locals speak of the moon's hand, a legend passed down through generations, describing a spirit that reshapes the desert to protect a sacred object. The tribe's elders claim the monolith marks a burial site for an ancient, pre-Bantu people whose language has been lost to the sands. They say the stone was placed there as a guardian, and the moon, a celestial key, allows it to shift, keeping its true location hidden from those who would disturb it. Scientists have offered more grounded explanations. One hypothesis suggests a rare combination of wind patterns and subsurface salt crusts. In the desert, when the moon is full, the temperature drop is slightly more pronounced, causing a thin layer of moisture to condense on the sand. This, in turn, creates a temporary reduction in friction, allowing the massive slab, balanced on a natural fulcrum of limestone, to slide a short distance. Yet even the most thorough measurements of the stone's weight, estimated at over 90 tons, make such a movement seem implausible without an extraordinary force. Another theory points to magnetic anomalies. The monolith contains high concentrations of magnetite, and during a full moon, the Earth's magnetic field interacts with the lunar magnetosphere, producing a subtle but sufficient pull to nudge the stone along a hidden track of basaltic silt. Researchers have placed magnetometers around the site, but the data remains inconclusive, leaving the phenomenon shrouded in mystery. What truly happened that night in 1973, and what unseen rhythm guides the stone's silent pilgrimage? Is it a trick of physics, a ritual of forgotten peoples, or something far more inexplicable, an echo of an ancient agreement between the Earth and the moon? The desert keeps its secrets close, and as the next full moon rises, the monolith waits, poised to shift once again, reminding us that some riddles are etched not in stone, but in the very pulse of the world itself. Deep in the heart of the Carpathian foothills lies a body of water that locals call the Silent Lake, a place where even the wind seems reluctant to disturb its glassy surface. The first recorded mention of this eerie pond dates back to a 16th-century monastery chronicle. The water reflects the sky, yet no feathered voice pierces its calm. The birds that hover above fall silent as if a spell has been cast. Since then, countless travelers have reported the same unsettling phenomenon. Approaching the shoreline, their ears filled only with the faint rustle of reeds, while the sky above remains oddly mute. Scientists who have dared to set up equipment around the lake note a puzzling acoustic dead zone. Measurements reveal that the frequency range in which most bird calls reside is inexplicably absorbed by the surrounding air, as if an invisible filter were at work. Some researchers suggest a high concentration of mineral aerosols, perhaps sulfur or boron compounds, rising from the lake's bottom and interacting with sound waves. Yet water samples taken over the past decade show only ordinary freshwater chemistry, leaving the hypothesis hanging on thin ice. Local folklore adds another layer of darkness. An old shepherd claimed that a night when the moon was swallowed by clouds, a procession of shadowy figures emerged from the water, their heads bowed, chanting in a language no one could decipher. The next morning, every bird within a 10-kilometer radius fell silent for weeks, their songs stilled as if their throats had been robbed. Some villagers believe the lake is a portal, a relic of a pre-Christian pagan, right where the very air was sanctified to keep the world's voices at bay. Modern expeditions have installed motion-activated cameras, hoping to catch any winged intruder. The footage shows only the occasional ripple, the occasional fish surfacing, and then nothing. Even drones hovering above are met with a sudden loss of signal, as if the lake emits an electromagnetic hush that swallows electronics as easily as it swallows sound. What hidden force lies beneath those placid waters? Is it a natural acoustic anomaly, a geological secret, or something far older? Perhaps a lingering echo of a forgotten rite that still guards its silence. The lake keeps its answer, and as the sun sinks behind the mist-cloaked hills, the water remains perfectly still, refusing to betray the mystery that has haunted this region for centuries. Deep in the mist-cloaked folds of the Peruvian Andes, where the air grows thin and the clouds cling to jagged peaks like ghostly shrouds, an ancient metropolis lies silent beneath centuries of stone and soil. For generations, the local Quechua have whispered of the City of the Stones, a place that appears only in old songs and in the trembling hands of shepherds who swear they have seen silhouettes of towers rise from the fog at twilight. In 2007, a team of archaeologists from the University of Cusco finally followed those whispered clues, trekking through the treacherous Cordillera Blanca until they reached a narrow valley that had been forgotten by modern maps. What they uncovered was a sprawling complex of perfectly cut stone walls, terraces, and plazas, all buried beneath a mantle of volcanic ash that had settled after a cataclysmic eruption roughly 400 years ago. The architecture does not match any known Inca style. Its blocks are larger, its joints tighter, and the layout follows a precise astronomical grid that aligns with the solstices and the rising of the Pleiades. Intricate stone carvings depict unfamiliar symbols, spirals interwoven with feline faces, that have no direct parallel in Andean iconography, suggesting a culture that predated the Inca or perhaps existed alongside them in secret. Radiocarbon dating of charcoal found in a ceremonial hearth places the city's peak activity between the 6th and 9th centuries CE, a period when the Andean highlands were a patchwork of competing chiefdoms. Yet the city's sudden abandonment remains an enigma. Some scholars propose that a massive landslide, triggered by the same volcanic event that covered the site, buried the inhabitants overnight, sealing their fate like a time-locked tomb. Others argue that a prolonged drought, recorded in ancient lake sediments, forced the populace to migrate to the fertile valleys below, leaving the stone streets to crumble under their own weight. The most unsettling discovery came from a sealed chamber deep within the central plaza. Inside, archaeologists found a series of perfectly preserved ceramic vessels, each containing a thin layer of an unknown metallic powder that glints with a faint violet hue. Preliminary analysis suggests it is a form of copper alloy, yet its composition includes trace elements never before seen in pre-Columbian metallurgy. Why would a civilization possessing such knowledge keep it hidden? And why was the chamber sealed with a massive stone slab that bears the same cryptic symbols as the city's walls? Even now, as drones hover over the ruin, mapping its extent in high resolution, the air still carries an uncanny stillness. The Andes echo with the faint sound of wind slipping through collapsed archways, as if the stones themselves are holding their breath. The forgotten city beneath the peaks remains a silent testament to a people whose story was erased not by war, but by the indifferent hand of nature. What other secrets lie locked within its buried streets, waiting for the thin line between myth and reality to be drawn? The answer, for now, lingers like the mist, ever present, forever out of reach. The night sky over the remote Scottish Highlands has kept a secret for millennia, and the stone circle at Callanish has become the key to a puzzle that stretches far beyond our planet. Imagine a ring of monolithic basalt pillars, each standing like a silent sentinel against the wind, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of rain and frost. At first glance, they seem to be just another prehistoric monument, a relic of a people whose language has long vanished. Yet when the first astronomers set their eyes upon these stones, they noticed an uncanny precision that no Neolithic builder could have achieved by accident. Every summer solstice, the sun slides between the two tallest stones, casting a thin shaft of light that strikes a shallow depression at the circle's exact center. But the mystery deepens when you follow the alignment beyond the horizon. On that same day, a narrow corridor of sight points straight toward a patch of sky, now occupied by the faint glow of a distant galaxy cluster. Ancient surveys, reconstructed from the wear patterns on the stones, reveal that the corridor originally faced a point in the heavens that, 200 years ago, was home to a brilliant supernova, SN 1006, one of the brightest stellar explosions ever recorded. The supernova erupted in the constellation Lupus, outshining Venus for weeks, painting the night with an eerie, blood-red hue that would have been visible even to those living in the mist-shrouded valleys below. Some researchers propose that the builders of Callanish mark the event, using the stone circle as a celestial calendar, preserving the memory of a sky fire that seemed to herald both doom and rebirth. Others suggest a more ritualistic purpose. The light from the supernova could have been interpreted as a divine signal, a cosmic invitation to the dead to cross back into the world of the living, a belief echoed in the stone's orientation toward the western horizon, where the sun dies each evening. What remains chilling is the lack of any written record. No petroglyphs, no Ogham stones, no myth survive that directly describe the supernova. Yet the stones speak louder than any inscription. Their shadows, their alignments, their silent geometry all whisper of an event that lit the skies long before humanity could name it. As we stand beneath those towering monoliths today, the same alignment still points to the same patch of empty space, now a quiet corner of the universe, its fire long extinguished. The question lingers in the cold wind. Did our ancestors truly witness a star explode? And if so, why would they etch its memory into stone, preserving a cosmic tragedy for ages yet unborn? The answer, like the supernova's fleeting brilliance, remains just out of reach, flickering on the edge of human understanding. What could turn a quiet night in a Siberian hamlet into a scene from a nightmare, when the sky itself seemed to bleed? On the night of July 20th, 1971, the inhabitants of the isolated village of Kachkener, nestled deep within the taiga of the Ural Mountains, watched in stunned silence as crimson droplets hammered the roofs of their wooden homes. The rain fell in thick, rust-colored sheets, staining the earth and the faces of those who dared to look outside. No one could explain why the water turned a vivid, almost metallic red, nor why it left a metallic tang on the tongue of anyone who inhaled the humid air. Eyewitnesses described the sky as a bruised, blood-stained dome, the clouds moving like a living organism, swelling and then unleashing the scarlet torrent. Within minutes, the rain turned to a fine mist, settling on the ground like a layer of rusted ash. The next morning, the villagers discovered that the water had seeped into wells, turning the clear spring water a deep vermilion. Those who drank it reported a metallic aftertaste, headaches, and a strange, lingering feeling of heaviness in their chests. Scientists were summoned from the nearest research institute, but the remote location and the suddenness of the event left them with little to work with. Preliminary tests of the water showed elevated levels of iron and copper, yet the concentrations were far too low to account for the vivid hue. Some researchers suggested a rare atmospheric phenomenon, perhaps a dust storm from distant iron-rich deserts lofted high enough to mingle with storm clouds. But satellite data from that era provides no evidence of such a dust plume crossing the Ural region at that time. Local folklore quickly resurfaced, invoking the ancient spirits of the forest, the Krasnaya Kaplia, a legend about a cursed rain that appears when the balance between humanity and nature is broken. The story tells of a forgotten settlement that once thrived where Kachkener now stands, a people who allegedly practiced blood sacrifices to appease the forest gods. When the rites stopped, the gods retaliated with a rain of blood, forever staining the soil. Even today, the red water stains remain in the old wells, a rust-colored reminder of a night that defied explanation. Modern analyses of the soil reveal microscopic particles of hematite, iron oxide, intermixed with organic compounds, but no conclusive source has been identified. Some scientists now hypothesize that a meteorite fragment, rich in iron, could have exploded high in the atmosphere, dispersing iron dust that later combined with rain droplets. Yet, no meteorite debris was ever recovered, and no seismic activity was recorded at the time. The mystery endures, feeding the imagination of both locals and investigators. Was it a natural, yet extraordinarily rare, atmospheric event? A lingering echo of an ancient curse whispered through generations? Or perhaps a phenomenon that our current science simply cannot yet decipher? The blood-red rain over Kachkener remains a scar on the map of the unknown, a reminder that even in the age of satellites and global monitoring, the sky can still hold secrets that turn the very air we breathe into something terrifyingly unfamiliar. The desert of southern Peru is a silent, endless plain where the wind has polished the earth into a tapestry of shadows and light. From the sky, however, the flat expanse bursts into a secret language, gigantic figures etched into the ground, their lines stretching for miles, their shapes only fully visible when a plane glides overhead. How could a civilization without written records, without metal tools, produce such precise, massive drawings, and why did they choose to paint the very air above their homes with symbols that have puzzled scholars for generations? The Nazca people began carving these geoglyphs around 200 BCE, dragging stones over the surface to expose the lighter soil underneath, creating a contrast that would endure for millennia. The most famous designs include the hummingbird, the spider, the condor, and a series of intersecting lines that stretch across the desert like a celestial map. Some of these figures measure up to 370 meters, their proportions exact enough that, when viewed from above, they resolve into unmistakable forms. Yet no Nazca ruins, no written tablets, no oral traditions have ever explained their purpose. One prevailing theory suggests that the lines are astronomical calendars. Researchers have aligned certain figures with the solstices, the rising of specific constellations, or the heliacal appearance of bright stars. The hummingbird, for instance, points toward the setting sun at the winter solstice, as if marking a ritual moment when the earth and sky converge. Another school of thought argues that the geoglyphs were pathways for water spirits, processional routes walked by priests during rain-making ceremonies, their steps activating the desert's hidden moisture. A more unsettling hypothesis comes from the realm of the unknown. Some investigators have noted that the intersecting lines form patterns reminiscent of modern runways, leading to speculation that the Nazca may have been aware of aerial observation, perhaps from high-altitude birds or even from mythic beings that could glide above the earth. Though speculative, this idea fuels the lingering question: were these designs intended for eyes that could never walk the ground? What deep, perhaps forgotten, knowledge did the Nazca possess that allowed them to translate myth into stone, to cast messages into the sky that only the heavens could read? As the desert sun blazes and the shadows lengthen, the glyphs remain silent witnesses to a mystery that refuses to dissolve. Their lines stretch into the horizon, inviting us to follow them into a past that still whispers, leaving us to wonder whether the answer lies buried beneath the sand or suspended among the clouds, forever out of reach. Deep beneath the rolling hills of the Carpathian foothills lies a fissure that the locals have called simply the Maw. It is a mouth in the earth that opens into a cavern so vast that its ceiling disappears into darkness, and its floor is strewn with stone formations that look like the ribs of some ancient leviathan. The first recorded entry into this underground world dates back to a 1912 expedition led by Austrian geologist Franz Kessler, who was chasing rumors of a hidden spring that could feed the nearby villages during drought. What Kessler and his team found was far stranger than any water source. When they stepped into the cavern, a low, resonant hum began to thrum through the stone, a sound that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was not a wind, not the distant echo of water, but a continuous, almost musical vibration that settled deep in the chest of anyone who stood within its reach. The hum persisted regardless of whether the explorers shouted, clapped, or fell silent, and it was heard even when they left the chamber and camped just outside its mouth. Modern seismologists have measured the phenomenon as a steady frequency of roughly 37 Hz, a pitch that lies in the lower range of human hearing and coincides with the resonant frequency of the human brain's alpha waves. Geologists have mapped the cavern's dimensions using laser scanning, discovering that the main chamber stretches at least 800 meters in length, 300 meters in width, and plunges down to a depth of 150 meters, large enough to hold a small town. The walls are composed of a rare form of limestone laced with veins of quartz that glow faintly when struck by the faint light of a lantern. In some corners, the stone is slick with an unknown mineral deposit that feels warm to the touch, as if the rock itself were retaining the hum's energy. Local folklore tells of the sleeping giant, a spirit said to have been bound beneath the earth after a forgotten war between ancient tribes. Some villagers claim that the hum is the giant's heartbeat, a reminder that the creature is not dead, but merely dormant, waiting for the day it might awaken. Scholars of myth note the similarity of this legend to other, earthbound, deities found across Eurasia, suggesting a deep-rooted archetype of subterranean guardians. Scientists have proposed several hypotheses to explain the sound. One theory suggests that the cavern's unique geometry creates a natural acoustic resonator, amplifying the faint vibrations produced by underground water flow through fissures in the quartz. Another, more speculative idea points to piezoelectric effects. The pressure on the quartz veins could generate a continuous electrical oscillation that translates into audible sound. Yet, when researchers placed sensitive microphones and vibration meters inside, the hum persisted even after all water sources were sealed off and the quartz was insulated, leaving the phenomenon stubbornly unsolved. Even today, the Maw remains off-limits to the public, guarded by a thin rope barrier and a series of warning signs in several languages. Yet occasional hikers, drawn by the whisper of an unexplained hum, have slipped through the fence, only to emerge hours later, eyes glazed and recounting a feeling of being watched by something unseen. Their stories end the same way. A lingering echo of that low, unearthly tone, fading into the night, as if the cavern itself had exhaled one final breath. What lies at the heart of that endless hum? Is it a natural symphony of stone and water, or does it hint at a deeper, perhaps even sentient, resonance that humanity has yet to comprehend? The answer remains hidden in the darkness, humming patiently, waiting for someone brave or foolish, enough to listen all the way to its source. Deep in the heart of the Altai Mountains, where the air grows thin and the sky seems to press against jagged peaks, a small Russian scientific party vanished without a trace in the summer of 1914. Their mission was simple on paper: map uncharted valleys, collect specimens, and document the region's folklore. What they returned with, if they ever did, has haunted scholars for more than a century. According to the surviving field notes, the team stumbled upon a cavern hidden behind a curtain of ice, a place the locals called Kamen Живой, the living stone. Inside, the walls were not the cold, inert granite the explorers expected. Instead, massive stone pillars rose like ancient sentinels, each one humming with a faint, resonant vibration that seemed to pulse in time with the explorers' own heartbeats. The notes describe a low, throbbing sound, akin to a distant drum, emanating from the rock itself. When the men touched the surface, the stone warmed under their fingertips, as if a hidden current of heat surged through it. One entry, written in a shaking hand, records a sudden, inexplicable movement. The stone shifted, revealing a narrow passage. In that instant, the air filled with a scent of wet earth and pine, and a whisper, almost a word, drifted past us. The whisper was never transcribed, but the terrified men fled, leaving behind their equipment and a half-filled journal. Later, when a rescue team reached the site months after the snow melted, they found the cavern sealed by a fresh avalanche. Inside, the stone pillars stood still, cold and silent, the humming gone. No trace of the expedition remained, except for a single, perfectly preserved stone slab bearing a set of strange symbols, unlike any known petroglyphs of the region. Some linguists argue the markings could be a forgotten script of a lost Altai culture. Others suggest they are a natural mineral pattern mistaken for writing. The mystery deepens when modern geologists, equipped with seismic scanners, report anomalous low-frequency vibrations emanating from that exact spot, even now, a century later. The vibrations match the frequency recorded in the original journal, a frequency that, according to a 2021 study, can affect human brain waves, inducing sensations of awe, dread, or even hallucination. Was the living rock a rare geological formation that somehow generated acoustic energy? Could it be a relic of an ancient, perhaps even pre-human, ritual site designed to manipulate perception? Or did the explorers simply encounter a phenomenon beyond current scientific understanding, a place where stone and spirit converge? The answer remains buried beneath layers of ice and legend, leaving us to wonder what other silent sentinels wait in the world's forgotten corners, ready to whisper their secrets to those daring enough to listen. What if a simple tool, forged thousands of years ago, could be the key to a mystery that still haunts archaeologists today? Deep in the mist-shrouded hills of northern Italy, a lone Bronze Age axe was unearthed in 2016, its blade gleaming with a metallic hue that no one could immediately place. At first glance, the artifact seemed typical, a sturdy, socket-edged head, a wooden haft once bound with rawhide. Yet the moment the metal was examined under a microscope, the grain of the material refused to behave like copper, tin, or any alloy known to Bronze Age smiths. Its surface reflected a faint, almost violet sheen, and the microstructure revealed a pattern of interlocking crystals that resembled neither bronze nor iron. Scientists from the University of Bologna sent tiny shavings to the Institute of Materials Science in Zurich. The spectroscopic analysis showed trace elements, molybdenum, nickel, and a surprising amount of arsenic, in proportions that do not match any regional ore sources from the 2nd millennium BCE. One theory, proposed by Dr. Elena Marconi, suggests that the axe may have been crafted from a meteoritic alloy, a hypothesis bolstered by the presence of nickel, which is abundant in many meteorites. However, the arsenic concentration is atypical for extraterrestrial metal, prompting other researchers to consider a lost terrestrial source. An ancient mine now buried beneath the Po Valley, its existence erased by millennia of river sediment. Adding to the enigma, the axe bears a series of incised marks that do not correspond to any known Bronze Age script. The symbols, linear, almost runic, and spaced with a precision that hints at a counting system, have sparked speculation that they could be an early form of proto-writing or a coded inventory of the metal's origin. Some scholars, like Professor Karim Haddad, argue that the markings might represent a trade guild seal, indicating a network of craftsmen who exchanged exotic materials across the Alps. If true, this single object could rewrite our understanding of Bronze Age commerce, suggesting that long-distance exchange of rare metals occurred far earlier than previously thought. Yet the mystery deepens when the axe was compared to a handful of similar artifacts found in the Carpathian Basin and the Western Balkans. Those tools, too, display the same anomalous alloy composition, but they were discovered in burial contexts dating several centuries later. Could there have been a forgotten civilization, skilled in metallurgical techniques lost to history, that spanned this vast region? Or perhaps a single itinerant smith, traveling with a cache of meteoritic iron, leaving behind enigmatic relics that whisper of a craft beyond its time? The truth remains buried beneath layers of earth and speculation. As researchers continue to drill, analyze, and debate, the axe sits in a glass case, its cold, uncanny surface reflecting the dim museum light, as if daring us to ask the same question it has posed for 500 years. Where did this unknown metal truly come from? The answer may lie in a forgotten quarry, a fallen star, or a civilization whose name has been erased by time, leaving us with a silent, metallic reminder that the past still guards its deepest secrets. The night fell heavy over the lowlands of Borneo, the humid air humming with the chorus of insects and the distant call of a hornbill. In the heart of the rainforest, a small village perched on the edge of a clearing had long relied on the towering dipterocarp trees that seemed to touch the sky. They were the village's guardians, their roots drinking the river's life, their canopies shielding homes from the relentless sun. Yet, on a single moonless night in August of 2018, something inexplicable unfolded. At dawn, the villagers awoke to an eerie silence. The usual rustle of leaves was gone, replaced by an unsettling stillness that pressed against their skin. When they stepped beyond the threshold of their huts, they found an empty scar where the forest once stood, a swath of earth as smooth as polished stone, devoid of trunks, branches, or even fallen needles. No stumps marked the ground, no twisted roots tangled in the soil. The soil itself was undisturbed, as if the trees had never rooted there at all. Local elders whispered of old tales, stories of the hungry earth that could swallow whole groves when the balance of the world tipped. Scientists who arrived with satellite imagery and drones were baffled. High-resolution photos taken just hours before the event showed a dense canopy, while the same coordinates now displayed a barren patch the size of a football field. Ground-penetrating radar detected no subterranean mass. The void was simply empty. Some researchers propose a sudden, localized fungal outbreak that could cause trees to collapse and decompose in hours, yet no fungal spores or decay were found. Others suggest a rare geomagnetic anomaly that might have triggered a rapid, invisible uprooting, but measurements recorded no fluctuation. Theories about underground gas eruptions have been floated, yet there were no signs of soil displacement or ash. What is perhaps most unsettling is the consistency of the phenomenon. Over the next 6 months, 3 more clearings appeared in different parts of the island, each appearing overnight without a trace of disturbance. Each time, the local people reported a faint, low-frequency hum that seemed to emanate from the earth itself, heard only when the forest was at its thickest. The sound never returned once the trees were gone. The mystery deepens when the cleared areas begin to regenerate at an unnaturally rapid pace. Within weeks, saplings sprout, their leaves unfurling in a frantic rush, yet the original giants never reappear. The forest seems to be rewriting itself, erasing its own history in a silent, relentless cycle. Scientists continue to monitor the sites, installing seismographs and atmospheric sensors, hoping to catch the next moment when the forest will vanish again. Until then, the vanished woodlands of Borneo remain a haunting reminder that even the most ancient, seemingly immutable corners of our planet can disappear without warning, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense that the Earth itself may be alive in ways we have yet to comprehend. What if a stone slab, buried for millennia, held a warning that still echoes in the darkness of our present? Deep in the arid foothills of the Anatolian Plateau, archaeologists uncovered a weather-worn tablet that has turned every conventional chronology on its head. The object, roughly the size of a modern paperback, its surface etched with a script that scholars can only describe as a hybrid of Hittite cuneiform and an unknown pictographic language, was found within a sealed pit beneath a collapsed megalithic structure, a place no one had expected to yield anything beyond pottery shards. When the first lines were traced, the symbols formed a chilling tableau. A sun eclipsed by a black disk, mountains trembling, rivers turning to blood, and a figure, half human, half beast, raising a staff that split the sky. Beneath this eerie scene, a series of numbers were carved in a repeating pattern that, after countless attempts, align with a series of astronomical events. A solar eclipse in 212 BC, a comet that streaked across the night over the same region in 532 AD, and most disturbingly, a date that corresponds to the year 2023. Some researchers argue the final set of symbols is not a date at all but a countdown, 7 cycles of the lunar calendar, each lasting 5 days, leading to a moment that, according to the tablet, will unleash the great fire that will swallow the heavens. The tablet's provenance is as enigmatic as its message. Radiocarbon dating of organic material trapped in the surrounding soil places its creation around 1500 BC. Yet the style of the pictographs hints at influences from a civilization that vanished before recorded history. Perhaps the enigmatic Danube Neolithic cultures that left behind only stone circles and enigmatic burial mounds. No known empire of the Bronze Age possessed the astronomical knowledge required to predict eclipses centuries in advance, let alone a comet whose path would intersect Earth's atmosphere in the modern era. Local legends have long spoken of a stone of shadows that foretells doom. Oral histories from shepherds in the region tell of a night when the ground opened and a great fire rose from the earth, consuming the stars. When these tales were cross-referenced with the tablet's imagery, the parallels were impossible to ignore. Yet, no definitive proof links the ancient warning to any specific catastrophe. Some scientists propose that the Great Fire could be a metaphor for a volcanic eruption, perhaps the 1912 eruption of Mount Etna, which, according to some seismic records, released a plume that briefly dimmed sunlight across the Mediterranean. Others suggest a more apocalyptic interpretation, a massive solar flare, the kind that could fry modern electronics, echoing the splitting of the sky. Even the most skeptical scholars admit that the tablet's precise alignment with multiple celestial events is unsettling. If the tablet truly anticipates a future calamity, what does that mean for us? Are we merely living the final verses of an ancient prophecy, or is the stone a relic of a forgotten worldview, one that saw the cosmos as a living tapestry of cycles and warnings? The answers remain buried beneath the same cracked stone, waiting for the next generation to decipher the symbols, and perhaps, just perhaps, to heed a warning that has traveled across the ages, whispering, "The night is coming, and with it, a darkness no one can explain." The stones of the forgotten fortress have watched centuries pass, their surfaces worn smooth by wind and rain, yet every traveler who steps through the crumbling gate swears they can hear a low, constant murmur, as if the very walls are breathing. What lies beneath those whispering stones? Deep under the courtyard, a network of tunnels stretches like the veins of some ancient beast, their passages hidden for millennia by collapsed arches and a veil of moss that clings to the cold stone like a shroud. Archaeologists first uncovered the entrance in 1927, when a local shepherd stumbled upon a narrow fissure while searching for lost sheep. Inside, they found a series of chambers hewn from the same basalt that forms the fortress's outer ramparts, each lined with strange, undecipherable symbols that predate any known script of the region. Some scholars argue the markings belong to a lost Bronze Age culture that vanished without a trace, while others suggest they are the work of itinerant mystics who used the subterranean halls as a secret sanctuary. The most chilling feature, however, is the central cavern at the heart of the complex. Its ceiling arches high enough to swallow a manhole, and within its darkness hangs a thick metallic scent, iron perhaps or something older. When explorers lowered lanterns, the light revealed dozens of perfectly preserved skeletons, their hands clasped around small, obsidian tablets etched with the same enigmatic glyphs. The tablets emit a faint, pulsing hum when touched, a phenomenon that modern equipment cannot explain. Local legend tells of a guardian that awakens when the fortress's walls are disturbed, a creature spoken of in hushed tones by the village elders. Some claim it is a colossal stone golem, animated by the very energy that seems to flow through the tunnels, while others whisper of a sentient echo, a residual consciousness of the builders themselves, trapped beneath the earth, forever repeating the same mournful chant. No one has ever emerged from the deepest chamber alive, and the last expedition in 1974 vanished without a trace, leaving only a single, shattered lantern and a set of footprints that end abruptly at a wall of blackened stone. The fortress still stands, its whispers growing louder with every wind that sweeps across the plateau, inviting the curious, the brave, and the damned to peer into its abyss. What secret does the darkness guard? Perhaps the answer is buried not just in stone, but in the very breath of the walls themselves, an ancient riddle that may never be solved, lingering forever in the echo of those faint, endless whispers.